Good morning and hello, Elkton, Cecil County, Maryland, and worlds beyond. This is your Monday morning lawyer, Attorney Jobeth Bowers, coming at you live from my office here in Elkton, Maryland. And I widened my intro there a little bit because I have a feeling that today's topic is going to reach beyond the state of Maryland, because today we're talking about something that I think is happening everywhere, something that with minor differences state to state is pretty much going to be handled almost exclusively the same way. And this one here branches from what I do on a normal basis. When we handle our accident and injury cases, one of the promises that we make to our clients is peace of mind. We're going to handle everything. When we get to the finish line on your accident case, you're going to see a breakdown of all of the medical care, any outstanding medical bills, how it's getting paid out of the settlements, and understand that procedurally, when somebody comes into my office to sign all that settlement paperwork and to walk out the door with their check, there's a stack of checks sitting on the desk. It's not just their check, but it's any of those medical bill checks, attorney's fee check, because we don't get paid until our clients get paid. And all of those go out in the mail when our client leaves, which means any of the bills related to that accident, our client, again, is walking out of the door with that peace of mind that bill is taken care of. Everything related to the accident. Obviously, we're not paying your electric bill or, if you have a dental bill that had nothing to do with the accident, things like that. But within the confines of that accident, if we knew about it, then we get it paid, unless you tell us otherwise, which never happens. I would always tell my clients at that point in time in the process, hey, sometimes, and this is true, so take this for universal value. A lot of these larger companies schedule their invoices to go out, which means you may walk out of my office today, and a few days from now, later this week, next week, you may get an invoice. And that invoice may show a balance because that check is going in the mail and that invoice is coming in the mail, both going in different directions and their paths cross. And obviously, nothing's going to be done with that in transit. But if a month and a half, 2 months goes by, because these checks that I have here are going in the mail today, if 2 months goes by and you're still getting those invoices, call my office. We will dig up the old check. We'll make sure that it cleared. We'll call somebody. We'll give them a hard time to be like, hey, you took this money. Why are you still sending this invoice? We'll fix it. This is a situation that, while I would say it for every single one of my clients, rarely happens. If it happened once a year where I had a client call me saying, hey, so-and-so still billing me, I'd look it up. I'd see that they cleared the check. I'd make a phone call. It would be fixed pretty quickly. Ever since 2020, the lockdown, the aftermath of the pandemic, everything with COVID, medical companies, not universally, but a lot, started outsourcing billing, records, things of that nature. This meant more things going in different directions and more problems. My role, what I promise to my clients, that peace of mind, has not changed. However, now 2 to 3 times a month, we have clients contacting us about bills that they're getting for old cases where I can substantiate and prove that they've been paid. So this stems from some questions, a lot of these that have come from other clients, and I am here with a good friend of mine, fellow attorney who is licensed in how many states, Patrick?
4.
4 states.
4 states.
Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, correct?
That's correct.
And obviously the federal level components to all of those. Patrick is the guy that we've been working with a lot more on these situations recently, because there is recourse for our clients for these bad bills and debts that they are being harassed about that they don't actually owe. So tell me a little bit more about what we're talking about here, so that everybody watching, I can tell you there's going to be more people from this episode than any other, because this is not just something that's going to apply to my clients. This stuff is happening all over the place, and not just with accident-related medical bills. So tell me a little bit more about what we're looking at today.
Right. Yeah, sure. So when it comes to bills generally, so like you said, whether it's medical bills or any other types of bills, you have a lot of different consumer protection statutes. Those exist on the federal level, they exist on the state level. But the main rule here is that you're protected from a debt collector sending you a false bill, misleading bill, inaccurate bill. All of those things are protected. When it comes to what we're talking about today, we're talking about different bills that may come as a result of an accident. If there's inaccuracies on those, we can sue, and we do. So whether that's under the federal statute, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or different states have different statutes. So in Maryland, there's a comparable Fair Debt Collection Practices statute. In Pennsylvania, we have one as well. So whether you're using the state statute, the federal statute, we're going to actually sue those creditors or debt collectors who send you inaccurate information, false information, and get you compensated for that.
Now, you're seeing obviously more and more of these. What types of results? What kind of client that is working with you in a situation like this come to expect as far as a end result here?
So the most common request we get from the clients is they just want the bill fixed. So certainly, I mean, what we're going to do is we're going to try to get that fixed so that if you don't actually owe the bill, we want to make sure that you don't owe it going forward. So that's the big thing. But in terms of compensation for having to even go through the process, the most common result here is we call it $1,000 statutory damages. That means whether or not you were actually financially impacted by it. So it's like if you never actually paid the bill, but you had to deal with this, we would normally get you about $1,000 in your pocket to compensate you for having to go through this hassle. If you had damages over and above that, sometimes we can get you a little bit more, but it really depends on the severity of the violation and how much we had to go through in order to get that fixed. But I'd say by and large, the most common result we get is we try to put $1,000 in our client's pocket, and then we try to get the attorney's fees and all the costs associated with that lawsuit paid directly by the offending creditor or debt collector.
So the debt collector is effectively through this process pays you directly.
That's correct. I mean, we don't charge our clients $1. They don't pay anything for us to start. We don't pay anything. They don't pay anything to us directly ever. They certainly don't pay us if we don't win. But the end result in most of these cases is going to be the debt collector pays us. We're going to provide the client with that $1,000 statutory damage, or if they get actual damages, we're going to provide a little bit more. We pay the client what they're entitled to, and then the debt collector pays us our attorney's fees separately.
So I don't want to get too much into the weeds because this is supposed to be kind of general information. This is not, lawyer talk here. You've mentioned two things here: statutory damages and $1,000, but then you've also mentioned actual damages, which would account for a reward coming to an offended client here higher than $1,000. What kinds of situations is this? Like a credit report thing? Is this what are we talking about that creates these actual damages for people?
So actual damages are really any type of damage that you've experienced. So it could be financial. So it could be either that you paid something you shouldn't have paid. It could be that they did affect your credit report. Sometimes, so if you're getting a bad medical bill and they're reporting that to TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, and it's wrong, that's going to ding your credit score. Maybe what that ends up happening as a result of that is you go to get a loan, you're either denied that loan, maybe you get a higher interest on that loan because of that inaccurate reporting. That's something that's compensable. And then, of course, we have emotional distress. And this is, it's very difficult to quantify emotional distress, but we've seen some very severe cases where debt collectors have been threatening, not just like an inaccurate bill, but we would get debt collectors who would call and make some really bad threats, illegal threats, things that they couldn't actually do. We've seen a lot. We've seen debt collectors say things like, hey, we're outside of your house. If you don't pay us immediately, we're going to come knock on your door, and things like that really scared our clients. Those are the types of cases where we would expect more than the statutory damages.
Gotcha. Yeah, those seem pretty severe. And it kind of rings through when I'm talking to my clients about another very fluid concept, which is pain and suffering in injury cases. One of the things that I always like to mention is, hey, you're spending time out of your day to deal with me. You're here in my office, and I'd like to think that most people, especially if they're hiring me, think that I'm a pretty good guy, but you still have to put up with me, and you probably have better things to do than deal with any and all of this. So it's good to see that kind of concept falling in line with other stuff like that. Now, what with the credit reporting stuff, that's a whole nother ball of wax, though, is it not?
Well, it could be. I mean, it could also just be a Fair Debt Collection Practices suit. So the real question here is who's at fault. If you have a bad credit reporting issue from a debt collector reporting a bad debt, we could sue under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. If we wanted to dispute that on the credit report, now we're talking about a whole other ball of wax, as you said. We're talking about the Fair Credit Reporting Act. In those cases, yes, the creditor is still going to be liable because they have inaccurate reporting. If they refuse to fix it, you can sue under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And potentially in those cases, you're also going to put the credit bureaus on the hook, whether it be TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. In these bad bill cases, but most of the time, are you still going to use fair debt collection practices? It's a little bit more straightforward and doesn't involve the dispute process at all. But there have been times where we have had to use fair credit reporting in these instances when we just couldn't get that credit report cleaned any other way.
Yeah, there was a time years ago when I would work with clients on their credit reports, and it was something that we were going to make part of the practice, but we just continue, especially after 2020, to get busier and busier. So it really wasn't something that we were outfit to kind of handle full time. And boy, oh boy, I will tell you that when I would do consultations for people trying to clean up their credit, it was so rare that there was a credit report that I would pull for somebody that didn't have more than one inaccuracy. And I'm not talking about some of the inaccuracies you've seen where they misspelled an old address or some other sort of weird wonky thing, or there's some odd version of your name that's also spelled wrong, or maybe it's spelled the way that somebody would mispronounce your name. I get that a lot, as you can probably imagine. But legitimate, just, hey, here's the proof that I paid that, yet it's still showing on there things. Almost every single one. It was kind of wild and crazy. And, it's, I like to think that what we do in my office on a day-to-day basis, much like what I know you do, is more of a service to the community than anything. And it just, I wish that I've on the ground had the manpower to do more of the credit repair type of stuff, because it's just such a valuable service to people. So obviously we've talked about this in the context of medical billing, but you mentioned this stuff happens everywhere. Are there other industries where it seems to be more common that you see these sort of mistakes? Obviously, I feel like I've pieced together the rationale of why, pre-2020, I would maybe see this once a year. Post, all this outsourcing, I'm seeing this several times a month. Where else do you commonly see this?
We'll see it in credit cards are a big part of it too. Medical debt's probably the most common, but credit cards, I think, are probably the second biggest offenders, because they'll charge off the debt. They'll send it to a debt collector. Maybe you've paid, maybe the amount's wrong. Maybe they're going through the process incorrectly. So with credit cards, we see that a lot. And then really people in bankruptcy. I mean, you file bankruptcy to try to get rid of this stuff. You try to get rid of the burden of the debt. And a lot of people coming out of bankruptcy still have this stuff following them. But again, it's that inaccurate credit reporting that follows you after a bankruptcy or things of that nature. We see that probably more than anything. You have a debt discharge from bankruptcy. The debt collector after the bankruptcy is still sending you bills. They're still sending you collection notices. So those are really something that we see frequently. Continuing to report charge-offs after a bankruptcy, reporting balances after bankruptcy, all of that stuff on your credit report makes it difficult. You try to do this just so you can go out and get a car or get a mortgage, and you still have all of these negative items on your credit report because people are reporting them incorrectly, still sending you notices and things of that nature. So those are probably the biggest places other than medical that we would see it.
Interesting. And the other thing that I think is important to note, because we've seen some weird stuff working together with these kinds of cases, a lot of times, especially like kind of circling back to that statutory damages, the amount of the alleged / incorrect medical bill completely irrelevant.
Right. Yeah. I mean, inaccurate is inaccurate. You have a right to have accurate information. If a creditor or debt collector is giving you inaccurate information, that's an actionable claim.
Yeah, and we've seen some crazy stuff. So, again, the way that this whole thing works, if you've got a situation like this, feel free to reach out to us. Do not leave a comment about your specific situation in the YouTube comments or on Facebook, because we get a lot of noise on both of those. It may not get seen. You can reach out to me the same way that you would reach out with a question or something that you would want to see on a future episode. Shoot me an email, info@bowerslawmd.com. And again, with this one here, it doesn't really matter. There will be some particularities, but it doesn't really matter where you are. So if you're in a state that's outside of the range in which we currently practice, we can find you relief for this, whether or not we're able to do it here firsthand, or whether or not we need to reach into that state to find somebody qualified that's going to go after this for you. We can get you taken care of. So feel free, either contact on the website, the email address, the phone number, whatever works with, for you to everything that you reach out to us about, completely confidential. And as we've already discussed here, like with most things that my office handles, these are the same, no upfront fee. In fact, the offending party, upon success, is not only going to pay an award to you for these damages, whether actual or statutory, but they're going to pay the attorney. So that means any fees that we incur for filing the lawsuit, or just the time that goes into it, all of that stuff, that is a bill that you may never see unless you want to see it, but you're not going to pay it. That bill doesn't exist as far as you paying it is concerned. I mean, think about it. Why would we send you a bad bill when we're representing you for bad bills? That'd be pretty fun. Then you'd go get another one. But, it's good to know that there's that kind of relief. I'd like to think that we do a fantastic job for all of our injury clients in that situation. And not only are we providing that peace of mind, but we're oftentimes, for many of our clients, providing a level of closure that if 6, 8 months, 2 years, I mean, one of the ones that just is laughable, and I'm not going to get into the particulars of it here, even though it's now public record, is one that it was like 2 years old. Nothing was happening. And then boom, all of a sudden, somebody that shouldn't be sending a bill, and the numbers don't even add up right. The whole thing, nothing about the thing makes sense. So if you get that bill and it's a head scratcher, like this math doesn't even math, that's what we're talking about. That kind of stuff right there will help get to the bottom of it. We'll help get it taken care of, not just the debt gone, but get it off the credit report if it's reported to your credit. Absolutely no money out of your pocket for it. So any last thoughts before we let people get back to their days and their weeks here?
If you have questions, ask. I mean, don't sit there with your bill and just wonder. We are always happy to talk to people about this stuff to see if there's anything that we could do. It said no money, no free consults. Ask the questions.
All right, everybody. Patrick Best, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you have a number of areas within the law that you have a deal of experience and expertise in. So I know that we will see you back on here at an episode in the future. So look forward to that. Again, any questions that you have, whether it's about what you know that I do or not, shoot it on out there to, again, this is the bit. Now my finger's off of the thing. Can I even point to that? That's fun. Right up there. There we go. info@bowerslawmd.com. We will we'll address that If it's not something that we do, as you know, we'll line up a guest that's got expertise in that area of law, and we'll talk about it right here, just like we have this one, a little bit of a crossover because it's kind of an in tandem thing, and it very much, not always, but very much bleeds out of what we do professionally here, handling auto accidents for people. Again, BowersLawMD.com or our number down there. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you back here.